Mm. Okay, that's really great to hear, though, that that they're so passionate,
Mm-hmm.
and that they're not just in it for the money. They're there because they want to be there and they want to get involved, and they have great ideas, and it's good that you've got people there with different skills that they can
Yes.
bring to the project. So I guess that kind of leads into our next question, which is, what is something you would like to see more of the Monero community members doing?
So there's a lot of things I wish the Monero community would do more.
Mm,
Um, one of the biggest issues I think within the Monero community is that we have been, this is going to sound very conceited, so bear with me. We have been so right for so long about so many things that we have
mm,
lost a lot of patience with noobs that do come into the community with this whole get rich quick mentality, with
mm,
this whole like what we've had to explain the same thing so many times. It gets a little frustrating because most people don't understand the fundamentals of blockchain.
mm,
Most blockchain project leaders don't understand the fundamentals of blockchain.
mm.
Okay, why it exists, what its weaknesses are, what its strengths are. And so it's almost like every single person who comes in, um, we have to explain these things. And so we're trying our best to make resources that explain these things for us. So like, oh, watch this video series and you'll get a better understanding, that kind of thing. But it's slow going and it's hard to localize it for everybody, so it's in everybody's language, and right, and it's
Mm,
um, I guess one of the things, I guess a very simple one that I can point at is I wish more people would donate even $5-10 of Monero to that community crowdfunding system. It's called the CCS, the community crowdfunding system.
right.
We have very generous donors who
Yeah.
give a lot, and on the bigger things we can get 50, 60 donators to get stuff done, and that's great. But I'd like to see more people get invested and put their money where their mouth is. Like, yeah, I'm willing to give $5-10 of Monero here, there, anywhere. You can go to ccs.getmonero.org to look at those things today and decide if you want to give any amount of Monero. And I would like to see more people take some initiative to get involved. There's a lot of lurkers. There's a lot of people just chill around, and we love these guys. Some of our favorite people are people who don't do much. They just chill around and make memes. But where you get some people like, you know what, I think I'm willing to take the plunge. And this is just the human condition. I get a good amount of messages saying, Diego, I'm ready to get involved. Where do I do this? How do I do this? And I give them a couple of tasks. Hey, can you do this for me? Never hear from them again. It's just the way humanity is.
Yeah.
And because we don't have the resources, right? You do have a lot of people coming in like, hey, I'll do this much. I'll do this for money. And like, okay, first of all, we've never seen you before. So
Mm,
typically we have there's a trust, there's a reputational thing going on. It's very informal, but if we have seen you do a good amount of volunteer work beforehand, we're probably more likely to fund a CCS proposal from you. Whereas if we've never seen you before, like, hey, I can do this for you. So I'd like to see more people be willing, and this is going to require a worldview shift, a mind shift, where people are willing to get involved for free at first, maybe not forever, but first, whether that is by donating or by working on this kind of stuff. And I understand there is a very high learning curve to Monero and blockchain in general. This is something the whole space suffers from. There's a very high learning curve to get involved, because if you want to be an educator, let's say you're a good speaker, right? You want to educate people. Well, that means
mm,
that you have to understand this stuff yourself.
mm,
And um, before this, before Monero, I've only been working on Monero for like 2.5 years now. And before this, I was not a nerd geek of any kind. I didn't really do a lot of technology stuff. Actually, Monero is my first open source project. Monero is my first almost everything.
mm,
Which I say this because I hope to give hope to anyone out there who's like, well, I'm not this kind of person. Is it possible for me to learn this? Yeah, I just did a lot of reading. I did a lot of watching. I did a lot of talking. And eventually I have become, once again, going to sound super conceited, one of the very few people in this space who actually knows what he's talking about when we're talking about this kind of technology. And I don't say this to brag, but I say this so anyone can, if you put in the time and the effort and energy, anyone can get to the place where I am today. But I do recognize that not everybody has that kind of time. Not everybody, think you got families, you got whatever, you got work, and you just don't have the time to invest in this. So for now, you're just comfortable with having the Bitcoin in your wallet. right?
Mm.
There is, even though earlier in this interview I said that Monero has one of the lowest barriers of entry to contribute, that barrier is still considerably higher than I wish it was.
I guess there's still quite a lot to learn, but I guess with what you've been saying, it kind of gives hope to people like me and possibly people watching today that don't really understand that much and still on that learning curve.
Yes.
To see someone like you who's kind of started where you did and now you know a lot and you've got a lot of information to give, it's quite interesting to see that. So yeah, I think that will be very interesting for people watching who are just getting into the crypto space and blockchain. But as well, like you said, there's some people come into it and they can't be bothered to learn. They just come into it thinking it's a get rich quick scheme, and they don't bother to learn. So now moving on to the next question, what is the number one mistake that users of Monero tend to make when protecting their privacy?
Things first. This is not a Monero specific thing. This is a
Yeah.
blockchain thing.
Yeah.
Write down your seed, your private key. Write it down right now. If you own any amount of Monero, any amount of cryptocurrency, write down your seed, because what happens is if you lose your seed, your computer guys, anything like that, you lose your money, you will come and rage on the Monero Reddit or Telegram or any of this stuff and say, your guys' coin, blah, blah, blah. You guys, blah, blah, blah. It's all your fault. No, it's your fault. Write down your seed.
Go and do that now.
Go right now. Right. Pause the video. Pause the video. Go to your wallet, write down your seed, and then press play. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Go do that now, everyone.
So that's not exactly privacy related, but we have to put that everywhere we can, because the amount of people who have lost their money and come to us, it's very saddening, really. Regarding the mistake people in Monero make about their privacy, there's a lot. And I say that because Monero, like I said before, Monero is not, a one-stop shop for privacy. You cannot just use Monero and expect to be private. The fact of the matter is, with the passive surveillance that's going on around us all the time, my internet service provider can see when I'm online, can see, maybe they can't see what I'm viewing because of HTTPS or if I'm using a VPN, but they can see that I'm online. I'm using the internet in some capacity, right? And so, and they can even potentially see, oh, Diego is connecting to an IP address that is known to host a Monero node. So like, let's say, here's an example of one place where Monero's privacy could fail. Let's say I have a node, I have a wallet that has the whole blockchain, but I only turn on the wallet when I want to spend something. I don't leave it running. And then I close it when I'm done with it. Okay. So what can somebody logically conclude from that? So my internet service provider is watching Diego's activity because Diego's an interesting person. And they say, okay, Diego is connected to a Monero thing, and now he's not connected to a Monero thing. And that took 2 minutes. They can reasonably conclude that I probably sent or received a transaction in that time frame. Right? Somebody's like, hey, Diego, check your wallet. I just sent you money. Or I paid somebody and then I closed my wallet, right? I can be reasonably sure that I sent or received a transaction in that time frame. Now, if they go to the blockchain, so many things are obfuscated. So I don't know if you know this, but if you go to the Bitcoin blockchain, you can put in any Bitcoin address and see every transaction that has ever happened to and from which addresses, how much Bitcoin is in there currently, how much Bitcoin was in there 10 days ago. You can so I encourage you to do this. Go to the getmonero.org website. There's an area where you can contribute in Bitcoin, and take that Bitcoin address that we paste there. And I want you to go Google Bitcoin Block Explorer and paste that into the Block Explorer, and you'll see how much Bitcoin is in there, right? That's the transparent nature of Bitcoin. You cannot do that with a Monero address. The sender is private, the receiver is private, the outputs are private, the amounts are private, everything is private. But the idea is that we can start making better and better educated guesses about which transactions belong to which people. So as an example, with that thing that I just gave, within that small time frame, we can be reasonably sure that maybe Diego sent a transaction. If we go to the block explorer and we see that only one transaction happened in the whole blockchain in that time period, it was probably me, right? Even though you can't see the sender, can't see the receiver, and can't see the amount, you can probably conclude that that was me. If you can't see the amount and all these other things, and you don't know who I sent it to or who I received it from, what can you do with that information? Metadata, this is all metadata, by the way. Metadata has been used to jail people, has been used as evidence for all sorts of things in courts and stuff. So what can they do? We don't know. Monero's goal is to try to reduce that metadata as much as possible. And so if there's 5 transactions in that time period, well, now maybe I'm one of those 5. You can be sure. If there's 1,000, okay, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But any amount, our idea is any amount of metadata is a bad amount of metadata. So we're trying as much as possible to reduce that to 0, which is basically impossible. It's an impossible task, but it's one that we're up to. We're trying to make it as much as we can and reduce that as much as we can. There's so much that people can do to reduce their privacy. Before, we used to allow custom ring sizes. So one of the ways that Monero protects privacy is that when you send a transaction, you are sending fake transactions alongside. So let's say 10. So you don't know which is the real transaction of these 10, right? But we allowed, so now it's a static amount. You have to mix with 10 for a total of 11 because there's 1 real one and 10 fakes, right? But before, we used to allow people to make a custom ring size. We call them rings, a custom amount of fakes. And so if I chose, if everybody was at 11, but every time I did 93, just this random number, and every time I did 93, even though you might think to yourself, okay, my privacy is better because I have more fakes. The fact of the matter is, because I'm consistently choosing 93, I stick out. And you can, if you find out that Diego uses 93, then anytime you see a transaction on the blockchain that uses 93 fakes, you can say that's probably a Diego transaction, right? So is this making sense to you?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it will make more sense to people who are watching right now who have a really good understanding. But yeah, no, that does make sense to an extent for me.
Okay, sure. So there's the answer to this question is it's in flux. We have a Monero research lab with 2 PhDs that are funded by the community crowdfunding system that are constantly working on attacks that you can do on Monero to destroy privacy. And so one of the things that, for that one that we did where people can enter their own ring amounts, we made it so it's a static ring amount. Now everyone has to mandatorily use 11, so everybody blends in with each other, right? And so we're constantly looking for those little things and seeing what we can do to fix those and that type of stuff. So I don't have any hard and fast recommendations. I guess my biggest recommendation would be use open source software, use other privacy tools in your repertoire, like a key, a password manager, Tor when it's appropriate, whatever. You need to have a privacy tool belt composed of many different tools to keep your privacy, because one of them will fail in some capacity or leak metadata in some capacity. But if you have a lot of privacy things, then the other things that you're doing can shield that or can make up for that, so you don't lose as much as you would otherwise have. So I guess the biggest thing people do, the biggest mistake people make, is that they think when they use Monero, they're A-okay, and that's not true. It's the best we have. Definitely it's the best we have, but it's not bulletproof.
Yeah. Okay, that's great to hear. So for our next question, what are potential improvements that are on the horizon? For example, like improvements in signature schemes or RandomX?
Right. So RandomX is something that we are getting audits for. It's a completely new mining algorithm that we're going to be hopefully putting onto the Monero testnet soon. And depending on how that goes and how the audits go, which are also funded by the crowdfunding system, by the way, when those will be up soon, then it will probably go into the mainnet. And it does address this whole ASIC thing, because Monero has the stance to be ASIC resistant, because right now ASICs are not commonplace, like I said. So, and really what it does is it tries to reduce the advantages. This algorithm tries to reduce the advantages that ASICs would have, because ASICs would still be able to be made. You can make an ASIC for anything, but it reduces the advantage that an ASIC would have over a general computer. And so this is it was a brilliant idea by one of our guys that was then worked on by another of our guys that was then kind of implemented by a third guy, and now it's become this big thing. And so we don't really know if it's going to be successful, but it's a fun experiment. It's a really cool experiment to see, so and
Yeah.
that's a good mentality to have for all these things, by the way. It's just like, this is a fun experiment. If it breaks everything, well, we're just okay. We can keep going, we can keep moving. But that's really exciting on the horizon. The Monero Research Lab is also looking at further ways to shrink transactions and transaction fees and transaction sizes. That just means you can have, the blockchain is going to grow at a slower rate, more transactions will be able to fit in the block, all this different kind of stuff. And they're kicking that out of the park every single time. Like just last year, we had the bulletproofs, which reduced transaction sizes and fees by up to 80%. 80% lower. That's a lot. And now we're even looking to optimize that and make that even lower. So a lot of, and of course, I, as a UI UX person, the GUI of Monero is coming along slowly but surely in the UX department and getting better and better. So as time goes on, the user experience is just going to improve all the more. Something that's not exactly a technological improvement, but Purism, which is a company that makes open source hardware, laptops, and computers, of which I have one, because most of our computers have a lot of proprietary hardware and software and stuff on them. They make completely open source everything. They really like Monero, and they just recently, they're putting out a open source phone. It's really kind of the first of its kind, and they really like Monero so much that they want to work with us in getting our software onto their stuff by default. So as soon as you get one of their machines, whatever they might be, you're going to have a Monero wallet, and we're trying to make it as nice and easy to use as possible. This is as close as Monero is going to get to a partnership, right? So because we have a formalized leadership or corporation, we can't partner with anybody. How does a community partner with somebody? But they're collaborating with us. That's the word we use. They're collaborating with us, and that is pretty exciting because you have to jump through so many hoops and get so many people and talk to so many people to collaborate with Monero. Most people don't even bother. But Purism, their ideals really match up with ours, and so we hope to do a lot with them in the future.
Okay, that sounds great. So then what is the biggest legal/political hurdle facing Monero like right now?
So this is the question people ask us, like, what if Monero gets banned by the government? Aren't you just screwed? Right? We get asked this a lot. People like, I want to go all in Monero, but I'm just afraid of the governments, man. What about the regulation? And the funny thing is, a lot of these are non-issues. As an example, Monero has, even though it's private by default, you can make it public by choice. And what that means is that Monero has a technology called a view key, where it's not the spend key. You can't spend the Monero in my wallet, but you can view what's in my wallet without having spending rights. So it's actually quite government friendly in that, if the IRS is like, all right, Diego, we're going to audit you, show us what's in your Monero thing, I can share the view key with them and they can verify for themselves that what I'm saying is true. So it's private by default, but it has an option, a choice of becoming public on an individual level, not a widespread level, but on an individual level. So that's actually very powerful because it mimics what we have in real life, where we have this thing called due process, where you have to get a warrant first before you come into my house and search my things, right? People just don't have, the government, any random neighbor, they don't have the right to just come in and look through my stuff without my permission. So it actually just mimics our real life rights that we have already. And Monero is really the only one that does that. Everything else, because it's public and transparent, anyone can just look through. I can look through your Bitcoin wallet right now. This is the way that it is. But Monero is the only one that kind of protects that by default. So a lot of these legal issues, I think, are non-issues because it comes from an ignorance of how the technology works and what it provides. So when you do have, kind of FBI, CIA statements or government statements like, oh, we're really uncomfortable with privacy coins, it's probably because these lawmakers, these regulators, they hear like, oh, Monero just keeps people completely anonymous, and they get scared. Right? What does this mean for a country? What we need is people to go to them and educate them, actually, to be that guy, actually, the way that Monero works is actually quite compliant with the way that most governments and stuff do things already. In fact, it's much more compliant with things like the the GDPR. Is that GPDR? I don't live in Europe, so
GDPR,
GDPR, right? So the GDPR says that you have to be able, any individual company or thing online has to be able to remove information about a person upon request. You can't do that with Bitcoin. It is transparent and public, and you can't get rid of that information. It's there forever. So if a transaction is ever linked to you, then like it's there forever, right? Whereas Monero kind of protects that kind of stuff by default. So actually it's playing better with the newer rules of different governments than something like Bitcoin could. It is actually more legally compliant with a lot of this stuff than other things like Bitcoin. So I see a lot of these things as non-issues. And if anybody wants to contact me and say, oh, Diego, what about this particular thing or that particular thing? I would say usually it's because of ignorance, not understanding how the technology works, not understanding how it plays nice, and it does play nice. And that makes it a very powerful tool.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people have not really done their full research into understanding that, like you say, Monero is actually quite compliant. And that's a good thing, really. Like I liked that about Monero, that, they're already, like you said, complying with government rules, like the GDPR stuff, it would fit quite well. Whereas Bitcoin, it seems strange that it would not fit in with that whatsoever. Okay, so for our final question, for a completely average Monero user, what is the best way that they can contribute to the project?
The biggest number one way is learning. So basically everything that I'm saying right now, I know all this stuff and I'm a good speaker, but I can't be everywhere at once, right? And over the course of our interview here, I've said lawmakers have to be educated. The regular user has to be educated. The trader has to be educated. There's so many people that need educating, and I can't be everywhere at once. We've got maybe 2 or 3 public faces in Monero that can do the things that I do. Some people just decide to remain anonymous or private, and that's totally fine, right? Privacy focused community and all. And some people, they may be public, but maybe they're not so comfortable speaking, or so we've got a great variety of people. And my hope is that as more and more people learn and become excited about the Monero technology, you will find people who have organic, natural connections to certain parts of government that they will go and they'll start talking to those people and educating them. And you'll have people that have organic, natural connections with exchanges or with traders or with whatever. So that way they can learn, hey, we don't have to be afraid to list Monero, because we've got things like Kraken that is US based, that is already compliant and does list Monero. And so more exchanges will be on board, more users will be on board, more governments will be on board as they realize, Monero is a powerful tool and it has a lot of potential to give liberty and freedom to people that wasn't there before, but it doesn't have to be a feared tool. And so the primary thing that anyone can do is learn, educate themselves about how Monero works and why it's awesome. And from there, we have a lot of resources. Like Monero's going to have a DEF CON presence. DEF CON, the biggest hacker conference in the world, blah, blah, blah. It takes place in Las Vegas this August every year. We had one last year and it was very successful. We're going back this year. So we have, meetups, and we have people running meetups in their own little town or having little lunches, or if you want to contribute that way, if you want to contribute with translation, if you speak another language, if you are a coder, by all means, come by and see how you can contribute in that way. We have our outreach and education type areas. If you're a UI UX designer, contact me and we can talk about this kind of stuff. And there's tons of ways to contribute. And there's ideas I haven't even thought of, right? There's things I haven't even think. So if you have an idea, you don't have to box yourself. Well, I can't do this, that, or the other thing. So I don't know. Dude, come up with an idea. Right? Let's talk about it. Let's brainstorm. Let's think about it. Let's see how we can make it happen. Some guys like, okay, what if we made Patreon, but with Monero, right? So content creators can get paid with cryptocurrency and paid with Monero. And it would kind of work better than one with Bitcoin, because with Bitcoin, you can see who is donating to who. And maybe a job can fire somebody, or you can get blasted on social media, depending on what kind of stuff you support. Whereas with Monero, you can support who you want to support with nobody looking into your business and nobody knowing what you're supporting, right?
Yeah.
So then maybe they don't have the money to do it, maybe they don't have the ability to do it, but the ideas get rolling. We start talking about these things, and we're like, okay, how can we make this happen? How can we make this a thing? So if ideas are always fantastic, and doer people are always fantastic. If you're an ideas and a doer person, man, you're the cream of the crop, not just in Monero, but like in the entire world, because there's none of those people around. So, yeah, that's my answer to that question.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good to hear that there's so many different ways. And I think as well that now that people have seen you today in this interview, like people that came to watch this video that perhaps didn't have a very good understanding of Monero, I think after this, they're definitely going to go and educate themselves more. And like you said, learning is so important. And I found through like doing these interviews and stuff that I'm learning every time, and it's really important that people go and do that. So all the links will be in the description for anyone that wants to go and find out more about Monero. And there'll be some links included throughout the video where Diego's mentioned certain things. That was our final question for today. It was great to have you here on the channel, Diego. And I think you've given some really detailed answers. I think the Reddit community for Monero will be very happy to see this and find out more about your detailed responses, because I guess sometimes in the community chats, people don't always get to find out exactly what they want to find out, but here they can find out more. So if everyone liked the video, make sure to go and hit the like button and subscribe, and keeping up to date with more videos that we're going to have very soon. And also don't forget very soon that you're going to be able to go long and short with Monero versus TUSD on BBOD. So to find out more about that, visit www.bbod.io. And don't forget also, like I mentioned, all of the links for different ways you can find out more about Monero and BBOD are going to be in the description. But yeah, thanks again, Diego, for being on the channel today. It's been great to have you.
Yeah, it's been great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'll see you all again very soon.